Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
Hello, my name is Sherry Budziak, and I'm the host of the Association 4.0 podcast. I'm also the co-founder of .org Community and founder of .org Source Consultancy to Associations. Today, my guest is Dr. Michael Tatonetti. Michael is a certified association executive and a certified pricing professional, and he's on a mission to advance associations and their pricing models for financial stability. As a founder of Pricing for Associations, he and his team work with associations to harmonize pricing and value across membership, education, sponsorship, events, and marketing. Michael is a proud Association Forum 40 Under 40 honoree for his dedication to the association field. That was a mouthful, huh? Welcome, Michael, and thanks so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you, Sherry, for having me. I'm excited to be here with you.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your background, and I'm especially interested in hearing about how you became interested in pricing strategies.
Yeah, so I kind of fell into pricing the same way that most of us fall into associations. I have had a full background in nonprofit work and made a pivot into associations. And from there, I actually was working at Professional Pricing Society. So I was over education, training, development, and worked with all the subject matter experts. And from there, I earned my certification just to earn it. Didn't really plan on doing anything with it. But then as I immersed myself more deeply into the association world, I just saw how there was a lack of that knowledge. And then especially the last, 3-4 years with COVID and everything going on. For me, it just kind of became, at first it was, let me kind of answer questions or help peers. And then it took on a life of its own and we started consulting. So I kind of fell into it. Like 10 years ago, this was not the plan. But I love what I do. I love working with associations. I've loved being in that field now for, almost a decade. And I really enjoy working on pricing with them.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
So, pricing, I think right now is very much, the topic of the moment. And at .org Community, we recently ran like a leadership collab event, and much of the conversation was centered around value and association professionals can deliver impactful value. And, just kind of what are your thoughts on this topic, and what strategies do you recommend when we're assessing value?
Yeah. So, when it comes to value, I think everything we do is just anything we deliver is value. So, we kind of think of it as what's the new thing, what's the hot thing. And sometimes that is the case. And we have to keep our thumb on the pulse of changes, both within the association space, but also our specific industries, whoever it is that we're, serving. But I would say as far as assessing value, I think that the big thing there is remember that when you're assessing anything, you're typically doing both quantitative and qualitative. And I think what associations tend to be good at is capturing qualitative feedback, but not quantifying it. So we're good at getting like testimonies or, earning the certification, helped, advance careers, or X% of those who've gone through this program have a salary raise or a promotion, things like that. So I think we're pretty good at getting the stories individually, but collectively, I don't think that we quantify it well. And I think that's where it's a foreign topic. So trying to determine, to put it simply, trying to determine how much value is it for your audience to do what you're doing for them? How much effort would they have to put into finding this elsewhere? Also, the degree of you being, as an association, you should be a level of a gold standard of approval, right? Because anyone can go into ChatGPT, go into Google and research information. And a lot of it can be great information, but, sometimes it's not. So to me, the association is the hub of qualified thought leadership, not just any answer, but the right answers, hopefully. And so figuring out how do we quantify the value of that and how that impacts the work then that our members are doing. That's where it gets tricky, but I would say if you're not quantifying it, if you're only, getting the qualitative, the great testimonies, that's one part that matters. But if you're not able to figure out a numerical, that's where then maybe start considering how might we do that? How do we gather that information?
So I'm curious of how you feel pricing strategies have changed over the last couple of years, and what are the trends that you're seeing kind of on the horizon, and has the pandemic altered the thinking in this area?
Yeah, it really has. I think that the pandemic was a magnifying glass on the lack of pricing strategy that a lot of associations had. So I think every time I do a training, I always ask the audience, typically, depending on what the talk is, but almost every talk I give, I ask the audience, when's the last time you changed price, or about how often, and about how often are you assessing value? And it's not uncommon for half the audience, sometimes all of them, to say it's been 5, 10, 20 years, right?
Yeah.
Or there might be some products where they're like, yeah, we update that every year or two. Like they look at their event price or their sponsor prospectus, but maybe membership or maybe education, certification, they don't touch rarely, especially membership. And so to me, there was a knee-jerk reaction during the pandemic where a lot was given away for free. And I'm not mad about that, but was it always the right decision? No.
Right.
And then now I think as people are coming back out of it, I'm seeing a few things. One is things that were given away for less or free. It may not have been communicated as well as it could have, that this was a truly like one-time thing. And now raising the price back up is hard, or just raising the price period from pre-pandemic pricing. And so I think a lot of orgs, what I'm seeing is a lot more orgs are saying, okay, we know there's a problem here, but we don't know what to do about it. So awareness, though, is the first step. So that's a good thing. Like at least they're like, okay, we know we got to do something here. We can't go 10 years without touching our price. We know that we typically are going to have a recession about every 10 years. That's just economics. We're going to have inflation. These are all normal things that are just a cycle of economics. Pandemics are once in a lifetime thing, God willing, right? Like,
right.
But the point is, we do have to plan for turbulent times. We're going to have them through multiple times in our career for our organization. So we can't put our head in the sand. We have to be aware and have a strategy.
So I guess, what do you think are some of the, best pricing practices that associations should be using now?
Yeah, I think in general, because of course it depends on the product, right? And all that. There's so much that goes into it. But in general, I think some things that associations should be doing is routinely raising the price incrementally of their products, normalize regular price increases. So every year, every 2 years, things should be going up a little bit. I think also not shying away from talking about price and financial sustainability as a nonprofit. So making sure that your audience understands that you are a nonprofit, that means you're reinvesting back in, this isn't going into because we'll hear about inflation right now, and no matter, political side, whatever, we typically hear inflation and it's just lining the pockets of corporations right now. And in some industries that's true, and in some it's not. I think for associations, it's important to get ahead and tell their truth, which is this is reinvesting back into the organization to continue to move our mission forward. So, shareholders are not getting payouts. It's we're taking that extra money and we're upgrading our LMS because you've been asking for it and you want this functionality, or we're implementing this upgrade into our AMS, or we're adding this thing to the event, or we're adding a staff member here for customer support and membership because you guys have said that's what you need. So we're listening, we're doing, we're not just inflating like CEO salaries. So yeah. I think that matters a lot, the communication and regular price increases.
And so then I guess, what do you think are some major pricing mistakes that people make?
I think one is not raising prices hardly ever. And I think another is throwing spaghetti at the wall and just guessing when you do. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is, okay, again, this is very generalized, right? Advice. But in general, I think most products you can kind of go up like 1 to 3% ish, maybe more. But every year or two, and no one's going to bat an eye. Now, again, over time, all that there's variables here, but that's a generalized. But what I will see is they don't raise prices for, let's say, 10 or 20 years, and then all of a sudden they want to jump up 50%.
Yeah.
Throwing spaghetti, you have to kind of assess and go, okay, wait, where are we at? Where can we go? What value adjustments? Like, have you been adding value to, let's say, membership for the last 10 years? Hopefully you have, but just not updating the price. And therefore, can you communicate that? Like, we're so proud of all of these upgrades and things that we've done, and we're going to continue to do that. So now we are going here so that we can financially supply to continue these types of updates. Or have you not updated member or value? And if so, then you need to do a value analysis first, figure out what updates are needed. I've had some clients who I tell them, don't touch price for 2 or 3 years. You need to do these value adjustments first and build back the confidence of your audience before you can hit them with a price increase. So again, it depends, but I would say the biggest mistakes are ignoring price. And then when you do, you try to jump because it's been forever. And it's like that's not a sustainable strategy.
Yeah. Cause I've seen organizations do that. It's where, as you were talking, like, we're adding programs, we're adding this, we're adding that. Well, now we've had to add all the staff or these resources. But the price has never changed. And then now, whatever it looks like, 8 years down the road, it's like, oh no, now what do we do? Because this is not sustainable. And if you go back and say, like, look at all that they're getting for this price, it doesn't make sense anymore. So that's a really good point. So I guess, how do pricing and organizational strategy, where do you see that kind of intersect?
Yeah. So to me, pricing and value strategy, it should be at the heartbeat of organizational strategy, especially the value strategy, because your organizational strategy is typically going to be, what are you delivering, which is value, to different constituents, and how are you driving that mission forward? And therefore, what staff are in place to deliver that value, what technology, what resources, et cetera, are all in place to give the value that you're saying. And then based on that value, what is your fair share of the price that you should be charging to sustain those operations? Because if not, then your organization's just going to go away, period. We've learned that in COVID. Again, I think that was almost like the wake up was, wait, we can't afford to keep going this way, or
right.
Reserves were skim, right? And it's like,
right.
This isn't going to work. So yeah, I think that it's directly tied. And I think that when you're talking about value, you're talking about what are you doing as an organization? And then we typically think operations, to me, that's value delivery. And then the finance is the price and sustainability. So to me, there are conversations we should be having, but I just don't think we do.
Yeah. Yeah. So what are some strategies for boosting member engagement?
Yeah, so I think ownership really matters, and I think it has for a while. So whether the org, whether the association listening to this realizes that or not, I think, again, you think 50 years ago, 70 years ago, people would join their association and it just was what it was. And it was kind of a no-brainer. We didn't really, right? Like, member dues were the majority of revenue, and that's just what it was. Now, now people need to have ownership and feel an incentive to join. What is the mission? Why are we doing this collectively? So, and again, that's where you quantify things like lobbying, even, right? Whether you're a state org, national org, that impact, and yes, it impacts the industry. So whether someone's a member or not, they get that benefit of any productive lobbying that you've done for your audience. But I think having them have ownership. So really, when you're doing a value analysis, saying, what do you need? How can we better help you? And thinking outside of that box, really listening. I like to ask questions when I'm doing a value analysis around, where else do you get related information? What can we learn from them? Again, we're competing not just with, quote unquote, other associations or knowledge hubs, but with just about everything. Even our sponsors in a way tend to become competitors because they recognize that thought leadership matters in converting. And that's typically the heart of what associations do, is a lot of thought leadership sharing, best practices, et cetera. So I just think asking them what they need and then really telling that story of, okay, we're listening, we've heard you, we're doing this, we're really proud to be doing this. And again, we're going to continue in this direction. So I think them seeing follow through and us just listening and learning and saying, here's how we can do this. It creates that buy-in, and that is what's going to keep people engaged and coming back, because then they feel like their needs are being met and they trust you.
Great. So Michael, I'm really curious on your thoughts on the current association business model. So I'm wondering, do you foresee any significant changes? And some groups are, experimenting with a variety of due structures. Have you seen any of the new strategies and things that are successful, or just things to stay away from?
Yeah, I'm seeing two things. One is I would say the industry went from being dues heavy to event heavy. We've centered, I would say pre-pandemic, we centered most of our revenue around running events, sponsorship that's mostly anchored to events. I think now in that tradition, I think that it's moving more, of course, to digital education, not even just virtual events, but digital education. I think whatever that looks like, town halls, upgrading webinars to real, learning, not just sales pitches, podcasts, access to all these different, different learning modalities, not just white papers, but really incorporating audio, video. So I think that's one thing that's interesting to see and almost feels in a way like the next frontier. And then as far as membership models, what I have been consistently seeing is a move towards more and more organizational sales. And so even if it's, again, not a trade or a society, but a trade, but an actual society of individuals, they're still thinking, how do we get the entire department signed up? How do we get different sites all signed up? Group sales of certifications or certificate programs, things like that. So I'm seeing more and more where there's research on LinkedIn of, okay, we think, you have 100 members from your organization, but it looks like you've got about 1,000 people in related roles that could all be members. What if we charge you for 200 people and all 1,000 are members? Because not all of them are going to log in. The cost to put them in the AMS is, $2 a year per person. It's minimal when you spread it out, but we up our number of members. Hopefully they become engaged and purchase other things. So I'm seeing a lot more of that, of moving to organizational level mindset for business development, for membership sales, educational sales. So that's been interesting to see. And I think it's mission aligned in that it's trying to serve the most amount of people possible, but still at a profit. The one thing I think that could come back to bite is when you look at active members, voting members, et cetera, those who are really stepping up, open rates, all that. It's great the first year or two to tell sponsors, hey, we've gone from 10 to 15,000 members, but when your email open rate dives down, and you have that data, that might impact their willingness to pay, et cetera. So we'll see what happens. It's all an experiment.
Yeah, I think people, I'm seeing that as well. And I saw an organization, though, do this many years ago. And what I don't think projected was how many individual members were a part of an organization. And then once they rolled those up to kind of a cheaper price for organizational membership, they actually lost money. So I think, making sure you have the data to support a change like that before, because the numbers seem great. Like, oh yeah, we can add all of these people, but they didn't realize if you had, 40 people individual at one organization, and now the membership, what they're paying is like half. So it was more of a win for the organization than it was for the association.
Yes. I've seen that too. I've seen that too with some orgs that just do it on their own and don't really, like run numbers, run scenarios. I've seen that as well. So you've got to be careful. And one thing I usually tell when you're moving to that type of model is never just do an open unlimited. Always have tiers up to whatever, let's say it's
Yeah.
like 1,000 or up to 5,000 or up to 250 or whatever. This way you kind of protect yourself, but yeah.
Yeah. That's what really, if they don't have that data or that expertise in house, that's why they need to call you, right?
Yeah, right.
Oh, so anyway, how do you use technology to improve pricing? You brought up,
Yeah.
you can incrementally, easily add people to an AMS or that sort of thing. But what are your thoughts on technology to improve pricing?
Yeah, I would say, okay, so I would say there that most of the technology that we use is more based around value analysis.
Okay.
So I think, of course, every org, I would assume, or the majority, right? Not all, but the majority have some kind of survey platform. So of
Mhm.
course, leveraging that. I think that even quick, like I usually have my clients, when you do like a value analysis, that might be a deep dive survey. Think of like a membership survey where you are asking 20 questions, 50 questions, like some big thing. But outside of that, do quick touch points quarterly, maybe, or semi-annually, in between that. Just, and usually I'll have a bank of like 10 questions and I'll say pick 1 to 3 of them and rotate them just to keep your thumb on the pulse. So things like, again, maybe have you gotten a raise based on whatever the certification or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
or what's a quick way that your membership or maybe access to the resource center helped you. Like, one person at one point said, whenever my boss asks me a question about this specialty, I know I can log into the resource hub and find something and give, again, the right information, not just any information, but the right information. So stories like that help. I would say Chat GPT for me has been good for helping with writing value propositions or value language for like sales pages, marketing copy. So you can feed it certain things there and say, hey, we're looking to jazz this up or whatever. Or sometimes, I might give it 3 sentences and say, turn this into 1 to 2 paragraphs just to help kind of, feel it out a bit and add to it. So it kind of depends, or maybe finding other adjectives, et cetera. So ChatGPT can be good there. We do use it in-house a bit. As far as pricing analysis, we tend to do a lot of work there in Excel and in our own like data system. So that's something most associations aren't going to get too deep into. They usually want to outsource that, but we do use, again, there for charting and kind of plotting willingness to pay based on answers that we've gotten. So we use technology for everything. I mean, it makes it so much quicker. So I would say lean into it. Don't shy away from it. I know ChatGPT is a huge topic right now in AI. And the reality is it'll move as fast or as slow as it does. We have no control over it. And you just lean into it. That's it. It's just like anything else, going from sending flyers to email marketing or getting in social, or you can try to fight it, but you're not going to. So lean in, figure out how you can use it to your advantage for your department, for your function. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I'll show my age here as I tell this story, but I worked for an association that we developed one of the first, if not the first, association website. And so then I went from that to another association where we built websites for other associations.
Mm-hmm.
They had a for-profit subsidiary that did that. And I was talking about like the panic right now around people talking about Chat GPT taking over the world and whatever, that I go, remember in Y2K when everything was going to crash? So I was in charge of IT and web services, and I got to the office, and I'm sitting there managing all of these association websites, waiting for the server to crash, and it never did. We had pagers, everything, waiting for it just to crash. So I'm hoping that that's going to be the same experience. As your point is like, lean into it. There's nothing we can,
There's nothing. And I think so. It's almost like we know what you were doing. Like after 3, 2, 1, you probably logged in and but that's the thing. Again, I think owning it and saying, how can we use this? Because we know as well, ChatGPT, sometimes the output isn't the best, right?
Right.
And so you still have to have strategists, creatives. You still have to have Again, like DEI, everything, even with like the AI around imaging and video, to know, okay, like is representation here? Is this who we want to be seen as? There's just so many things. Like you still need experts right now, at least today. ChatGPT is not the expert, but it's a great tool to help. And then we'll see where it goes. Right? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Right. So give us some of your advice on what you think association leaders can do in the next few years to be successful.
Yeah, I would say that if you do not have a pricing and value strategy, if you don't have like a governance document that really outlines parameters and all the things, if it's kind of you just go for it and it's in your head, I would say one thing is if you have not raised prices, start raising them, normalize it. We have a lot of, I'm never the like plug person, but our blog really does have like a lot of good resource there and material and like examples of communicating increases and all that. So check out anywhere, just Google, find there's stuff out there for pricing. Even if you look up for profit, right? You can pivot it to the association space. So, start raising the price, start communicating. But the big thing I would really say that I'm almost saying more than raise the price is if you have not analyzed value, go do that. Figure out, don't do every product because you've probably got at least 10. Start with, what are your 1 to 3 big revenue drivers? And not just revenue drivers, but I would then also maybe narrow it down to profit drivers. Because, for example, your event might be a big revenue driver, but when you look at your profit margin versus maybe digital education or membership, they're probably, a way bigger profit margin. So start there and then go, okay, what, again, just value, run a value survey. We've got a blog with like a template on it for free on the website. Google whatever, just ask ChatGPT, however you figure, but like do some value work. Ask your audience, what are we doing well? What are we not doing well? Where else are you going again? And what can we learn from them? What could we maybe sunset, or what are you not accessing? What are you accessing? And I always say, ask demographic questions too, because some might say we don't care about this, but then you start realizing it's certain segments. And again, that impacts then how do you market to these different segments? So someone who's, young professional or someone who's more of a hiring manager probably cares about your career center a lot more than someone who's about to retire. It doesn't mean you get rid of the career center. It means the retiree doesn't care because it's not a part of their function. So that's just like one quick example. So I would say focus on the value. If you have not for the last 3 years, really focus on what value are we delivering and where are we missing the mark? And then you go, okay, now out of this, what can we realistically do in the next few years? And do we need more revenue to do it? Do we have enough in reserves, but you still raise the price? But all that then kind of drives the pricing discussion, but start with value.
And where can they find your website and your blog?
Yeah, the website's pricingforassociations.com, and that's easy. And then it's /blog for the blog. And literally there's like templates there, everything. It honestly is good information. And that's a lot of people say that's not me saying it. So
that's great.
Go steal whatever you can from our blog.
That's great. So Michael, can you share like a pricing problem and solution that you came up with?
Yeah. Let me think. There's been a lot. I'll give 2 examples that maybe to show the variety again, because I don't think pricing and value is one size fits all in what every association right now needs to be doing. One org came to me, they're an association, they blew up a lot pre-pandemic because of some media coverage in a good way. Blew up meaning gained a lot of members, not blew up in a bad way. But they got some great media coverage and just exponentially grew beyond they had planned at all. And in that, they didn't raise price, they didn't touch price, but they also didn't really touch value. And then COVID happened and, everything. And so they came to me a year or 2 ago, probably. And we did, value analysis, pricing analysis, ran a lot of focus groups, talked with their people. They had 4 clear segments of like member types. So really spent a lot of time deep diving. And what we found with them, their one I kind of mentioned earlier, but they're one where we found that because they had not touched the value, most of the value was beneficial when someone first signed up. But after that, it wasn't like once they had it, they had it. And there was really no ongoing value. And so to raise the price, most members felt like I'm willing to pay that for my initial year, but then like I feel like I should actually pay less, not more. And so the work that we did, it was, okay, but what else can we do? And what does that look like? And a lot of it was some simple things, things around like they didn't feel like headquarters was communicating enough. Like the CEO wasn't as visible. So like really doing town halls beyond just annual, really like hearing from, seeing, doing more video on Facebook, things like that. And then there were some value adds, digital education that they wanted. The conference was not as accessible because of the cost for most members to send more than one person. And so most orgs, it was a small team of maybe 4 to 6 members for context there. So, they would typically send one person and they would bring back the notes. So by adding in recordings, things like that, that also helped. So they were one where I said, okay, wait a year or two, do these things, but then here's where you can go. Another one though, another org that I worked with, we actually looked at membership, a certification, and like 3 different events that they do. And we found that in most of it, they could absolutely go up and the value was already there and the people were already bought in, especially with one event in particular. It was kind of a no-brainer where they were able to take the price up about, I think it was somewhere around like 25 to maybe 40%, which was huge, and without really touching the value. So that's pretty much all profit. So that's a great thing. And not that case for all of the, products, but across the board, they were able to raise prices. So sometimes you can raise price and you don't need to do much because you've already been doing the value add. Sometimes you haven't been doing the value add, so you need to stop. And then other times, maybe it's somewhere in the middle where it's like, okay, we've been adding some, but if we add a little more, now we can go here with the price. So it all depends. I think that's why you really got to have a real look at your org and go, okay, where are we at? And listen to your audience.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, so who are the leaders today that you kind of most admire and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can think of 2. I'm gonna say one really famous person and then one association person.
Okay, great.
The famous person I can think of is Michelle Obama. I really value that as a person. Again, politics aside, whoever's listening, whatever their thoughts are, I value that. To me, she has remained someone who just seems really grounded and rooted and knows herself and knows her values. And then in that operates from that. And also in a way, I don't know how else to put it, but really, I feel like she understands seasons. Like she, in a way, it's hard for me, I feel like, to say this as a man with her being a woman, but I value that when you hear her story now, she made decisions for herself on what mattered in each season of her life, when she was really in the spotlight, when she stood back. As a parent, I value that because there are times where I choose not to do things in my career because I want to be home more. And then there are some times where I travel more, right, for speaking and all that.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, I value the rootedness and the knowing yourself and operating from that, not from the craziness that can be around you. And then the other is an association person, and a mutual friend of ours, actually. But I really value Terry Cardin as a leader. And the reason is I've been able to see behind the scenes with her a bit. She's someone that, in case listeners don't know, talks about like non-dues revenue and runs Non-Dues-A-Palooza. And she's done a lot of stuff with .org community. So she's someone that I see her as a leader with her people, really enabling them, like, okay, you're the expert here, go. And she's always available. Like, she puts her phone number on her website.
Yeah, she does.
She's like, if you're thinking about coming to this event and you have a question, just call me. And I'm like, most people would never do that, right? They would give a contact us email that someone else's. She's just so, and again, I'm not saying that's what everybody should do. I don't do that on my website because I have certain boundaries for my time. But I just love watching her be authentic and really care about what she does and how she shows up in the space. So
Yeah.
for different reasons, I would say I admire both of them as leaders.
Yeah, I love Terry. And you're right.
Yeah.
I could text her at any time. Text her right now during
Yeah.
this
Yes.
podcast, and she'd probably respond, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Like, hey, I'm talking to Michael. She's like, great, I told you about him.
Yes. Right. Always.
She's like, you have to talk to him.
And
like,
it's probably a video. It's not just a text either. Like, show her a video, like, I'm here right now, and whatever she's doing. So it's just I think just showing up and being, just that showing up authentically is awesome as a leader.
That's great.
Yeah.
So my last question for you today is,
Mhm.
how would you like to see associations evolve in the future?
I would love if associations would have a pricing and value governance document, and if they would really put down,
that's a good one.
Yes, if they would really put down to paper, here's how often we assess the value for each of the products in our portfolio. Here's how we do it. Here's survey templates, focus group templates, who's responsible. Here's how we do pricing analysis. Here's how often we do it for each product. Again, here's, focus group materials and survey templates and all that. And who are the decision makers? When do we discount? In what cases do we discount? What are our loss leaders? What are the things that we rely on more for profitability? What's our policy around reserves and trying to have, what amount of operating budget? What do we do when there is a recession or inflation or a pandemic? Like, how do we plan to respond? And some things, I've always heard since I was probably like 21 that, most policy handbooks are a response to something that happened, right? Like, it's usually something happens, then we add it as an SOP, like, oh yeah, whatever crazy story. So there might be things we aren't even thinking of right now that I would say add to a governance document in 5 or 10 more years. But starting with, how do we do this? How do we deliver value? How do we assess it? How do we figure out price, communicate price increases, all those things? I think that would be phenomenal if organizations could have like an SOP around that.
Well, that's great. Thanks for the great advice today, Michael. I really appreciate it. And hopefully, thanks to our listeners, hopefully they got a lot of value out of this podcast, my interview with you today. And if somebody wants to contact you, how can they do that? I know we mentioned your website, but is there, I know you're not going to give your cell phone number like Terry, but.
No, I don't know my cell number. That's right. But LinkedIn, I'm super active on LinkedIn. So you can go to our website, pricingforassociations.com, and there's a contact form. But if you just want to directly message me on LinkedIn, you can add me, message me. I'm good for sending voice notes back over typing typically, but I always respond, and that's me on LinkedIn, at managing my LinkedIn account, replying. So it's an easy way to ask a question if you have one.
All right. Terrific. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Sherry.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. .org Source specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. Please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.